had prior. Yeah.
Okay, it's 7 p.m., and I'm going to call this meeting to order. Will you please stand with me to say the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, and indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, Cheryl. Will you do roll?
Present.
Present.
Councilmember Chuck Owen.
Present.
Councilmember Judith Dunn.
Here.
Councilmember Carl DeYoung.
Present.
Councilmember Jared Couch.
Here.
Councilmember Paula Kelly.
Here.
Okay. So I am looking for a motion to approve the agenda.
I move we approve the agenda for this evening.
Second.
Okay. I have a motion by Councilwoman Dunn, seconded by Councilwoman Cornegay. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And now a motion for consent agenda, items 1 through 9.
I move that we approve consent agenda items 1 through 9.
Second.
Okay. I have a motion by Councilwoman Cornegay, seconded by Councilman Couch. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Now if I could get Paula to come down in front for a moment.
You did a good job.
So it is my honor to honor Paula for the 2 years that she has been on council. Paula has been somebody who has contributed in an enormous way. She's been a great asset to the council, and she has always thought of the city first. She's always given in that way, and it seems like it's not adequate to say thank you, Paula, for all that you've done and all that you've given. But on behalf of the city of Sedro-Woolley, I just want to say thank you. Thank you very much for your time here at Sedro-Woolley on City Council.
Thank you.
I have a few words to share. I want everyone to know I have appreciated the opportunity to serve the city as a council. We have dealt with many issues, and I see many yet to come with the new governing board. I wish my opponent well, and hope Mr. Allen will embrace the concept of growth and work with the council to manage it and not curtail it. I know our mayor will do a great job. She has represented the city in the most professional way, and I look forward to continuing the collaboration between the city and the chamber. I want to wish Brendan McGoffin well. He's an amazing young man and has demonstrated that he will be informed and come prepared. I want to congratulate Chuck on retaining his seat, and I hope all of the new new council members to keep in mind that the city needs your ongoing support. I've seen ups and downs in our downtown stores and hope the trend towards growth continues and that we keep our town vibrant and unique. Uniqueness is what sets us apart in downtown Sedro-Woolley. Growth allows us to provide the infrastructure we need, and it isn't whether there will be growth, but how well we manage it. My plan is to remain a part of the community as the chamber director and will work with the city to help manage that growth. What would I like to see? Well, some of these are just kind of odd, but perhaps some longer parking spots in a designated area for long bed trucks. As seen around them as one is backing up or not hitting them because they stick out too far is always a challenge. I would suggest looking at the area east of Metcalf on Woodward. I would like to see a change in how the lodging tax committee is chosen. It seems there's been little opportunity for some recipients to participate in the process while others have served continuously for years. And that's all I'm going to give you for tonight. And I thank you all so much, and to the folks that work for the city. You all do a great job. Thank you.
So the plaque that we see on Pola says, Councilmember Pola Kelly, in recognition of nearly 2 years of service to the people of Sedro-Woolley, from February 28, 2018 to November 26, 2019, your work on the City Council made Sedro-Woolley a better place, and your expertise and experience will be missed.
Thank you.
Well, I'm hoping that you'll continue to give us updates from the chamber like you used to.
You know I'll still bug you.
Okay, and we will move into staff reports. Chief Tucker?
All right. One of the things that Sergeant Eaton brought to my attention might be good for the council to know about is, and I think, Jermaine, you were asking about it, is our peer support program that we're moving into. We're going to be a member of, well, there'll be a collective of officers from different agencies that are going to be doing a peer support program for critical incident stress management, and just I guess it's formalizing a program that has been going on outside of our group. It's more of a county-driven thing. Now it's more of an internal-driven thing. So we've got the policy we're looking at right now to make sure there isn't anything we want to add or change, and we're going to be starting that hopefully by the end of the year, first of next year. So we'll have at least 1 or 2 officers from every agency, hopefully, that'll be involved. Right now, it's us, Mount Vernon, and the Sheriff's Office is working on getting their feet under them for it, for the same thing. This last weekend, we had our public safety testing event down at the high school track and in the cafeteria, and these are where we find our recruits. And we had Officer Wilson, Katie, down there recruiting, and I went down and spoke with them, and I think Lieutenant McElroy, who's down there for a little while, and a couple of other officers stopped by, and just we're getting an eye on them, and we're also giving them an idea of good places to go to work. I think 4 or 5 different police agencies were there recruiting. The testing probably had about 50 or 60 people there, but it was a combination of fire, corrections, and law enforcement. So hopefully we'll get some more bodies off of that, because we need the pool of people to hire from. With Prop 1 looking as good as it does, we're looking at hiring at least 6 in the next year, with retirements and people having 1 person left and replacing somebody. So we got a lot of people to hire, and the one that we just hired, we had to go through almost 30 applicants to get that one.
Wow.
So we're going to keep track of that. I think that would be something interesting. The council would like to hear our progress during the course of the year, where we're at on that and what we're doing. Sergeant Sorsdahl, she's pretty much devoted a lot of her time to hiring and vetting the people that we have on our lists, and we're working on changing some of our civil service rules for changing times. We've never really had this amount of people to hire at one time, and the way we've been doing it in the past just doesn't work well with it. We're going to start leaning on the way Mount Vernon's civil service rules does, and rotate new people in as they come into our list, where they would place in a scoring matrix. But we're going to have that reviewed and do a little bit of work on getting that into our civil service rules. And the last thing I got is I'm going to be gone next week. We have the fall Chiefs and Sheriffs Conference, and I'll be away at that. And Lieutenant McElwraith will be in training next week, but just over in Mount Vernon. So we'll have to rely on Sergeant Couch and Sergeant Harris to keep track of things for us. Yeah, come on, smile a little bit. But that's all I have.
All right, thank you. Chief Klinger?
Mayor, I have nothing.
Okay, thank you. Did you want to talk about, I don't know that anybody else has heard about Give Burn a Boot, how much you collected and how, I know it was very successful, I was there. It
Do
was
we have
great.
the final number yet, Frank? Yeah, it's well over 30,000. We're still getting we still have some coming in and still some going out, but hopefully we'll have that final number shortly. So.
All right.
But it was very successful, and thanks for everybody that attended that. So.
Right. Well, thank you to your staff for putting that together. I know it's a lot of hard work.
It's fun.
Yeah, it is fun. All right, thank you. Mr. Coleman?
All right, we met today with a representative from the U.S. Census talking about what she had come to talk to the city about what the city can do to help bring awareness of the census coming up in 2020. I think a lot of people are aware that it's coming, but they still look for assistance in getting the word out and helping the people in the community fill out the paperwork, have access to information. So the city is going to be participating to help with a complete count in several ways of, disseminating information, making it available in the lobby, making information available on our website, providing rooms for the census to use should they be needing trainings or holding events. So the intent is to cooperate with the census for the purpose of, we want to have a good idea of how many people are in the city of Sedro-Woolley, first of all, so it is a little self-serving to cooperate because, a lot of the funding that the city receives and the state receives comes from accurate census counts. So it is important for the financial purposes of the city, plus local coordination with other governments, lending a hand. We're all in this together, sort of concept. So that starts, we'll start seeing information from the Census Bureau to the people of Sedro-Woolley and the rest of the country and sometime in mid-March, they say. And then there'll be several ways to do it this year instead of just doing it the paper form. You can do a paper form, you can do it online, and there'll be some telephone option also. And they'll be providing resources for the computer assistance. And so I think so far the library is possibly on board, and the food bank, although it's not in the city, will also be providing assistance, and possibly the Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah, I just spoke with her today.
And probably some other city-affiliated organizations will probably join that list of assistance as we figure it out. We're just at the beginning of that process. And then I wanted to let the council know that the city received an 85-lot planned residential development. That's a residential subdivision application last Friday. And so we're still reviewing the application materials, and then we'll be sending out a notice to everybody within 500 feet, putting a notice out at the site. This property is on McGarrigle Road, on the south side of McGarrigle Road. So it would be a loop road with 85 units on it. It would be age restricted to 55 years and older residents, which in some ways is kind of a lesser impact on a neighborhood, because statistics show that they produce fewer traffic counts than a traditional subdivision. In some cases, I think as much as 40% less than a typical subdivision. So we're just beginning the review process on that, and then we'll be getting the information out to the community to review. And then I will be gone tomorrow for a leadership training, and that's all I have.
All right, thank you. Mr. Burke?
So, John, that plat application ultimately comes to City Council for final approval?
So the process is that it goes to, through the planning department, we put out notices, we do the State Environmental Policy Act notices, that's SEPA, you probably are familiar with. We receive public comments, and then we put those comments together along with any staff comments, take that to the hearing examiner, and the hearing examiner holds a public hearing. He then reviews the city regulations, city comp plan, and state regulations to make sure that the application is in conformance with all of those regulations. He then makes a recommendation to the City Council, and that recommendation would then come to the City Council's probably a month or so after he makes his recommendation, and then the City Council has the opportunity to approve the preliminary plat or ask for changes. And typically we do those with 2 reads for the preliminary plat. And then after the preliminary plat, should it be approved, then they submit their full construction plans, how are they going to build the roads, how is the stormwater system going to operate. They do all the detailed work after a preliminary plat is granted. And preliminary plat is really just, what's it going to look like on paper, how many units, how's the general layout going to be. The developer doesn't spend a whole lot of time and money drawing up the specific plans at that point until the council says that they'd be willing to approve the preliminary plat. And then they go into the hard design stuff that costs money. And then they would be able to build it. And then it would come to City Council ultimately for final plat approval after that, after it's all completed.
So I asked John for that information for 2 reasons. One, for any council members who like to go to planning commission meetings, and for council members who are receiving calls from folks in the community about this project. And I understand that we have both of those scenarios happening right now. This is a quasi-judicial matter, and so ultimately when it comes to your desk, you'll be sitting in your role not as a representative of the people taking the temperature of the neighborhood and voting the way they'd like you to vote, but as judges, looking at the merits of the project, balancing those with the code, and making the decision that the code would determine is the right answer. So that's I guess maybe a long-winded way of saying that if you're getting calls from members of the community in the McGargle neighborhood who want to meet with you, politely decline. You can't do that without jeopardizing your ability to fairly hear this project when it shows up at the dais. If you do participate, or if you go to planning commission meetings, that would be a point where it might be a good time to leave the meeting. If you don't, then certainly the record that's developed at the planning commission does come forward to the council, so you'd want to disclose at that time that you were present at the meeting and personally witnessed the discussion. Same thing with the hearing examiner process. So this is just one of those times where we have to treat these projects fairly by the code, and again, it's not a measure of what the community wants or doesn't want. And I guess I'd back that up and say if we're finding that the community really doesn't like a project like that, then your remedy is to change the code for the next project. It's too late for this project because it's already vested a permit application, so it has a legal right to be processed under the laws of today. So anyway, I hope that helps. I just have one item for you, which is City Council late materials. It's on your dais. This should have been in the packet under consent calendar agenda item number 5. It's the corollary to the Hauser Park. So you approved earlier tonight the installation of the new electrical service at Hauser Park. This is the easement that actually allows PSC to operate their facility on the city property. I reviewed the format. If I could have my wishes, I would probably structure it slightly differently, but these are compromises. We work with the utility on language of easements, and we try to maintain a good working relationship on those. And this is consistent with many of their other easements. So my recommendation is that you would approve this. We can get that order processed and the easement in place.
Okay, are there any questions or concerns regarding this?
Excuse Jared because he had to take a law enforcement call. I'm just asking.
I don't know. I think Jared's going to be back.
Okay.
Yeah. So, approval? Do I hear? Do I have a motion?
Oh.
For ordinance 1938-19, which would...
Which one is it?
1938-19, it's the light materials.
Thanks.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mayor, I'm looking at the easement, not the ordinance.
My bad.
Yeah, it's easement.
Okay. Oh, okay. So you're just looking for an approval?
Yes, please.
Okay. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? There we are.
Thank you. That's all I've got.
All right. Mr. Merriman?
Okay, the other item you had in your late materials is 1938-19.
Well, there we are. All right.
To help clear that one. So we'll talk about this one in a few minutes when we have the public hearing for the budget. But what I did is from our last meeting on the 6th, I did update our budget and our budget ordinance to reflect Proposition 1 and Initiative 976. So the current one you have now at the late materials has all of those adjustments included in it. So the other item I have is I put at each of your places tonight a blue folder, and this is the very official folder from the State Auditor's Office that has all of the materials from our exit conference they had last week. So they completed their audit for 2018. It was a financial statement audit. They looked primarily at the numbers that we give for the year 2018. Next year, we get the combined financial and accountability audit. Not only would they look at the numbers, but they come and actually look at how we process things, like invoices and different procedures we do. So that'll be about a 3-week audit, where this week it was about 1 week. So you'll see a little bit of difference as we go from year to year. But the result was we had a clean audit. They gave us a clean opinion letter, and everything looked really good. They complimented finance staff for being quick with their questions and coming back, and it really worked really hard to get them everything they needed and for us to kind of help them wrap up and get back out the door. So audit went well, and we're moving on to other things for this year. So that's what I have for tonight.
All right, thank you. So we'll move on to council reports. I'll come back to Jared. Councilman Nolan?
I'd like to ask the chief if he's aware of the semi-trailer parked on Township. There's not much room in that right-hand lane if you're going to town, and there's no markers, no cones, no nothing out. So I'm scared somebody's going to ram into the back of that thing.
Do you mean on Ferry Street?
Township. No, Ferry. Yeah, across from the Catholic Church almost.
Yeah. So they sold their house, and having lived as property line neighbors with them, I've learned that they do a lot of things with semi-trucks. Like when they go to the various races, it's a semi-truck that rolls in. So I believe that's their moving truck.
Well, they should have some cones out, you know.
Some sort of a marker, yeah. All I'm saying is I think that's a temporary moving type operation, but I've noticed it too. It's huge.
There's not a lot of room there when you're headed west.
I have a sergeant on. I'll just shoot him an email right now and have him drive by, make sure, see that it's safe tonight anyway, see that it gets moved, and then I'll be on tomorrow as well.
Okay, thank you.
All right, that's it. Councilwoman Cornegay?
I just wanted to mention, last week I went to a Habitat for Humanity volunteer lunch, just to find that the Beatty Street will be complete mid-next year. And they're really excited about another project here in Sedro-Woolley. Teresa Pugh expressed that. Skagit Trail Builders had another awesome event where we had a lot of high schoolers out on November 9th building trails. We got a lot of progress. I missed the month before. It was really amazing to see how much work they did. And the next one for that will be December 14th. They always do the second Saturday, even through the winter time. Let's see, another one was, so Dr. Knight was here on November 5th, and we had lots of city employees here. I just wanted to thank the city for doing that. And we had probably about, I don't know, maybe 100 employees or whatever, and it was really eye-opening and wonderful. And I'm not sure if we have any more information, but because no one from the city council other than myself and no one from the museum showed.
I was there.
Oh, well, I don't consider you city council, but yes, of course, the mayor was there. And lots of our staff, and it was wonderful. And she also gave out handouts with lots of other information that I'm still reading through. I learned a lot myself. So I would actually suggest that anyone that kind of wants to learn about, it talked about religion and not only racial issues, but religion, sexual orientation, disabled, basically anything that any of us have felt that, even if it's not obvious, so actually it's really informative. And so I think Aaron might still have some information, I'm not sure. But another thing was, well, Mark's not here, but I just went to a veterans lunch on Veterans Day, and it was really nice. And it was nice to see the handicap spots or disabled spots being used. Both of them were used, and that got done really quickly after my request. And I just wanted to thank them for that. They are very appreciative of having that work done and so fast. And so every time I drive by, I can see it being used, and I just wanted to thank you guys for doing that. That's it.
All right. Councilwoman Kinsler.
For timing.
Okay. Councilman DeYoung.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The 7-acre FEMA site at Riverfront Park, do we have a name for that yet? Because, it's like Founders Landing or Sedro Landing or something of that nature. It needs a name. So the trail building and tree planting continues. It was impressive to see the contingent of volunteers from the Wildcat Steelhead Club and see Comer out there operating a big auger. So the trail building continues and the 500 trees continue on there. And if you're interested in volunteering, please contact the Fisheries Enhancement Group for dates and times. They're doing some great work out there, and we look forward to a continued partnership with that group. And number 2, let's consider a joint resolution of the City Council and Mayor of Sedro-Woolley declaring a citywide policy of inclusion at our next meeting, the 27th, which is our next general council meeting. As John talked about, connecting with the census staff, doing some connecting with community influencers, and I think that in addition, since we talked this afternoon, John, the Senior Center is now connected with the census and is eager to work with them as well. Let's see, did an initial walkthrough at Riverfront Park today with Parks Works Operations Supervisor Nathan in scoping the first steps in contacting multiple nonprofit organizations so we can apply for their grants to remove invasive noxious plants and replace them with native plants along the Skagit River from the boat launch to Hart's Slough. It was great doing that with Nathan. He had some great ideas on connectivity that would bring folks into town and back up to the Swift Center and then back down to the boat launch to make it a loop. It was a great tour. In addition, next week, Wednesday, is the meeting with the Skagit Watershed Council, which is a group of over 40 nonprofits that are eager to help Sedro-Woolley with this project because it has to do with bank restoration, salmon enhancement, and water quality. Let's see, Ward 6 residents attended and gave some public comment in last week's council study session regarding speeding issues on Railroad Avenue, so that was great to see. And also, let's consider the City of Sedro-Woolley 2020 legislative agenda for the upcoming 60-day short session in Olympia. I think we only have a couple more meetings before the end of the year, and I was hoping that we could have a public, as has been our practice in the past, public legislative priorities town hall with our 39th legislative district delegation here, right here in these chambers. That's what I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Councilwoman Dunn.
Oh, I think he took our turn.
Oh, sorry.
Councilwoman Kelly.
Regarding legislative updates and opportunities to speak with your legislators, the Skagit Business Alliance will be hosting an event on December 9th at a very early hour in the morning, probably like 8 or something. And it will be posted in the chamber newsletter, but it is an opportunity to meet with the representatives from not only the 39th, but the 40th and the 10th. And so anyone is welcome to attend. And this is just, they're not serving food, it's just going to be coffee and an opportunity to mingle and mix with these people. So I do encourage you to attend. There's a lot of events going on between now and that time, which include the Christmas parade and the tree lighting and the Shop Small Saturday, and we also have a chamber luncheon coming up, and that one will feature the Cascade Job Corps and the Helping Hands Food Bank. So just encourage everybody to participate in the activities that do happen in town, and to get out there and help us promote them. So thank you.
All right, thank you. I just have a thank you to the police department. I've already sent it out to them, but I want to state it publicly for their service on Friday. Last Friday, Mary Purcell and Central School, the children get together. They do flags, they have hats, and they have a parade that goes up Talcott and down Metcalf, and then all the way back around down Puget to back to the schools. The high school band participates in it. There's a fire truck in it, police cars in it, the American Legion participates in it. It's a grand parade, it really is, and it's a lot of fun. And it takes a lot of work and organization to make it happen, and you could see our officers doing double duty. So we saw them on Metcalf Street blocking traffic, and as we came down Puget, there they were again, doing the same thing. So thank you, Chief Tucker, to you and your staff for all the work that you do to make that happen. It's a big deal for the kids, and really that's what it's about, is our future generation coming up. Yep, and I sent a thank you to him. Thank you. Okay. And then on Monday there was the American Legion luncheon that happened, and which was very nice. I saw where the other communities had other parades that day. And other things have been mentioned, so I am going to move on, and I have now
Madam Mayor. Can I have just a quick,
absolutely.
I apologize for stepping out. I just had a couple of things I wanted to mention to the council. Had a pretty lengthy discussion with concerned citizens on Orth Way, where I happen to live. And there's kind of been some ongoing grumblings over the chip sealing that happened on Orth Way. And I believe there will probably be more citizen comment forthcoming. There's quite a bit of support in the community over trying to find a solution to seal the road, because the gravel that was put down doesn't seem to be adhering, and I assume it's due to lack of traffic. I think it's a good solution. Seems to work good on county roadways, but it might not be the best fit for Sedro-Woolley streets that don't see a lot of travel, but I understand it's what we can do within our budget means. So if any of the council people have time, swing by Orth Way. You can kind of see the road surface is not adhering as the citizens would like it to do, and I'll be speaking with Mark on maybe some possible solutions or information I can get back to the community. I understand that the mayor and Aaron have met with one of the concerned citizens, so if any of the council want further information or just can swing through the area, let me know.
Yeah, actually it was Mark and I who met with him.
Oh, it was? Okay.
Yeah, it was Mark. Yeah. And I actually, so I did see that road. I actually did walk that road.
Yeah.
So
He also pointed out that it's getting into the drainage, so that was also another issue.
Yeah, it's it's not ideal, and I'm trying to be realistic about it. I understand that if we can't re-asphalt every road, because the cost is probably about 400 times the cost of what it is to chip seal. But I think we need to look at if there's a possibility to seal what's down, or if we can clean up the mess that's been left. Just try to find some solution to keep the neighborhood happy before I get ran out of there. And then just on a more positive note, I want to just say outstanding job to the Sedro-Woolley Sedro-Woolley Firemen's Association for Boot the Burn. It was an outstanding event, raised some money for just some phenomenal kids, and I really look forward to that every year. And then also Chief Tucker, who chairs the Skagit Domestic Violence Sexual Assault Association Board, outstanding job on that event in raising a lot of money for Skagit DVSAS. And lastly, I just want to say, Paula, I am going to miss seeing you up here. You and I had an outstanding election. I couldn't have asked for more of a friendly opponent 2 years ago, and I just want to say that you do an outstanding job at the chamber, and I look forward to continuing to see your face in the audience. So that's all I have.
Thank you. I'm sorry. So, as Jermaine mentioned, we did have what we called a culturally responsive education class here, training, and this was in response to the flyer that had come out, or the mailer that had come out from the museum regarding the KKK, because there was quite an outrage from the community regarding that article. And so that was something that was important to Brenda, who was actually on the board, and Jermaine and myself and some of the other council members. And so we did plan that. We had Dr. Sharon Knight come up. She did do a fantastic job. And out of that, she talked about the importance of being inclusive. And I think it was Paula who had brought up some time ago that she wanted to see that on our website, which it is. We do have that now posted on our website. And after the training, I had received from Carl a example of what Anna Cordes had done as far as a resolution. And although it didn't, we wanted to find something that actually fit with what we had trained, what we had learned. So in searching other cities, we actually found where Maple Valley had a wonderful, it's actually a wonderful proclamation that has to do with inclusion, and I would like to read that tonight on behalf of the city. So, the proclamation of the City of Sedro-Woolley declaring Sedro-Woolley a city of inclusion, whereas the people of Sedro-Woolley value the diversity of the community, and whereas equality, inclusion, and safety for all persons are core values of the City of Sedro-Woolley, and whereas the City of Sedro-Woolley is committed to recognizing the dignity of all people, and whereas verbal and physical actions to threaten or intimidate people are not consistent with our core values, are not part of our culture, and do not reflect who we are. And whereas the politics of division, isolation, and hate have no place in our community, and whereas all people deserve assurance of the basic principles of equality and human rights guaranteed in our Constitution and Bill of Rights, and whereas we celebrate our community's diversity and welcome all people to live, work, play, and go to school here, regardless of their national origin, color, race, sexual orientation, or gender identity, financial or socioeconomic status, or political opinion. And now, therefore, I, Mayor Julia Johnson, do hereby proclaim that we reaffirm our community's shared values of compassion, inclusion, respect, and dignity, and that our commitment to building an environment and a community in which everyone is valued and everyone has the opportunity to thrive. And we encourage the citizens to likewise affirm these values of inclusion. This is signed on the 13th day of November. And I again want to thank I really want to thank Dr. Sharon Knight for coming up, because we were really nervous about it. We didn't know what that would present or what that would look like, but what she really made us aware of is that we all have our strengths, we all have our weaknesses, and whether we are conscious of it or not, we all have our biases. So it was an excellent training, and I think it made us better aware. Okay, so thank you, and we will move on. I will now open it up. It is 7:39 for public comment. So if anybody would like to come up and give public comment, please give your name and address, and try to keep it within 3 minutes. Hello again.
Good evening. I'm Klaus Johns with the Skagit County Democrats, and I'm here to speak in support of the people of Sedro-Woolley, its council, and their mayor. This also has to do with the flyer that went out, and it didn't have a lot of context with it, and I'd like to provide some more history and context with that. In 1772, the court case Somerset versus Stewart was heard in England, and in 1772, they outlawed slavery in England and Wales. One excerpt from that case is, "The state of slavery is of such a nature that it is incapable of being introduced on any reasons, moral or political, but only by positive law, which preserves its force long after the reasons, occasions, and time itself from whence it was created is erased from memory. It is so odious that nothing can be suffered to support it but positive law." In 1807, England passed the Slave Trade Act, which abolished slavery as a trade. The United States did it in 1808. People may ask what the delay is. Well, that's the first year the U.S. Constitution came into effect. It was the earliest state that could do that. In 1833, the British colonies passed the Slavery Abolition Act.
Thank you. I'm a high school teacher, so I'm used to speaking up, so thank you. In 1833, the British colonies passed the Slavery Abolition Act, which freed 800,000 slaves in all the British colonies. But in 1865, the U.S. Civil War freed 4 times that number, almost 4 million slaves. In 1865, the 13th Amendment was passed abolishing slavery, and that was also the year the Ku Klux Klan was formed. The original version of the Ku Klux Klan was founded by Lieutenant General Nathan Bedford Forrest. People believe that it was commonly supported with the Confederate military, but the fact is it was not uniformly. Lieutenant General James Longstreet spoke out against it even at its inception. In 1868, the 14th Amendment was passed that provided all persons born and naturalized in the United States or subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without the due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. 1 year later, the Ku Klux Klan was disbanded by its very founder, who felt that it no longer reflected any of America's values. In 1948, the United States had completed another great civil strife, World War II, and Eleanor Roosevelt went on to work on the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. For those of you who don't know, Eleanor Roosevelt received the first standing ovation of the United Nations, and that honor stood for almost 50 years before it was delivered again. These are her words. "Where, after all, do universal human rights begin? In small places, close to home. So close and so small that they cannot be seen on any maps of the world. Yet they are the world of the individual person, the neighborhood he lives in, the school or college he attends, the factory, farm, or office where he works. Such are the places where every man, woman, and child seeks equal justice, equal opportunity, equal dignity without discrimination. Unless these rights have meaning there, they have little meaning anywhere. Without concerned citizen action to uphold them close to home, we shall look in vain for progress in the larger world." I'm here tonight to speak in support of the mayor's proclamation, and thank you to the City Council for all you've done to clarify this matter, and we do not believe that it reflects the value of the people of Sedro-Woolley or anyone within Skagit County. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else give public comment? Dorothy, I have you down for the public hearing. Did you want the public hearing? I just want to make sure that you're speaking to whatever it is you want to speak to. The public hearing will be on the budget, if that's what you're going to talk about.
Okay, I have one quick comment.
Oh, perfect. Then, yes. Good. All right.
This wasn't why I came, but in hearing the inclusion statement and also reflecting on what was just said, I think somehow we need to include a land acknowledgement statement. We're here on land that was not ours to begin with, and just in all my studies lately, I just feel very strongly that even in the museum, there's things that reflect, it's taking other cultures' deep meaning, or I'm not sure the right words because I really wasn't planning on speaking to this, but appropriating those things and making them not reflecting their true value. So I would suggest that somehow that be worked into any sort of inclusion statement. And I would propose, if you're looking for a name for that land that you were mentioning earlier, that an indigenous name would be very appropriate, because there's very little reflection of that in our valley. And yet, I know the Upper Skagit tribe has contributed so much to our community. So I would just like us to reflect on that going forward and see if that can somehow be worked in.
Okay, thank you. Dorothy, before you go, one thing, we need it for the record. We just need your address, your full name and address. That's okay.
Yeah, it's 316 Garden of Eden, Sedro-Woolley.
Thank you. Yeah. Anyone else for public comment? Okay, it is 7:46, and I will close public comment. Oh, Phil.
How much time between the gap there? My name's Philip Murray. I live at 223 State Street. And Carl, I think you should name that park Bug, because that's what that area was called. I think it'd be, it's a part of the history here.
All right, thank you. Anybody else?
That's true.
Okay, it's 7:47, and I will close public comment, and we will now open it up for a public hearing, and this has to do with the 2020 annual budget. So anyone who would like to speak on the budget, and again, Dorothy, I see that your name is here. Would you like to come up and speak to that? Again, you have to give your name and address. Try to keep between 3 minutes.
Yeah, I'll keep it as short as I can. It's Dorothy DeFremery, 316 Garden of Eden Road. And there were just two things. I'm not for or against the budget. I would just like to see a pocket of that money reserved for improvements to areas that are impacted by this growth that everybody is promoting, because as I've spoken to the council before, there are some areas that are really in need of attention, particularly the ditch, the culvert, where it's on the north side of FNS, where it meets Garden of Eden. You've heard me say it before. There is a very deep culvert with fast-flowing water and no shoulder on the road, and the water is swept from there underneath FNS. And if any child or adult riding a bicycle, there is this much space before it hits that ditch, which is taller than this podium, much taller, I think. But there's nothing to prevent, if someone fell, being swept into that culvert. And that's really scary to me. The other issue is the center line down Garden of Eden Road, which, I really am grateful for the little bit where it encourages people to turn over so that they don't meet traffic head-on. But there is a need for that's a very narrow road. It was never intended for the kind of traffic it's getting. I would say there's at least 80 new residents since the time I have lived there. And Usually per residence, there's 2 cars. Everybody says they're going to be diverted and go down. Well, people who are going to be diverted are going to go up to I-5. But anyone going into town or Highway 20 are going to go down Garden of Eden. So it's been impacted horrendously. And even if Garden of Eden is shot straight through, as is proposed, down the road, that won't prevent people from turning down Garden of Eden. And like I say, there are about 80 new residences, 2 cars per, that's 160 trips. Round trip, 420. How's my math? How am I doing? That's all.
All right, thank you. So nobody has signed up for the public hearing. Is there anybody who would like to speak on the budget? Yes.
Hi, I'm Dennis O'Neill. I reside at 109 Talcott Street, and I guess I'm looking at the budget here. I think it'd be more educational to also include. I would like to know what the library construction fund was, how much was spent last year, and how much was spent by both by breaking it out between the county and the city was spent by each one of them, and also in addition to the $6,831,687 that's on the budget for 2020, I was wondering how much of that is going to be the county share. I guess none of it's going to be because it's under city, but I was wondering how much the county's going to spend on that, since that's been a big issue all the time about the so-called sharing program on it. I'd sort of like to know what that would be, and I think the people that tune into this thing and watch this, because there's nothing much on TV anymore, so they got to watch it. I think they would like to know also why it's so expensive, given the fact there's a lot of money spent this last year, 2019. Looks like a lot of money is being spent next year for the city and by the city. I'm just curious what the county's chipping in. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Would anybody else like to speak towards the budget? All right, I will close this public hearing. It is 7:52, and I will turn it over to you, Mr. Merriman.
Thank you. There isn't too much to add tonight. I kind of stole my own thunder a little earlier when we talked about the late materials item. But from the November 6th meeting, the 2 things, again, that I adjusted were the Proposition 1 results. So I did bump up property tax revenue in the general fund, and pretty much an equal and offsetting increase to the salaries and other costs that were outlined in the proposition. The second item was Initiative 976. The result of that for us is I have to reduce Transportation Benefit District revenues by $233,000 for next year. That's the money we anticipated to come in. Mark had a number of projects that was slated for. What I'm looking at proposing in the budget is moving $100,000 of real estate excise tax money, or we call it REIT. We have a pretty good reserve of that funds to cover some of those projects, about $100,000 of it. And then when Mark's back, I'll be talking to him on how to balance out the rest of the $133,000. He had a number of projects, and I don't want to play Public Works Director and make that decision for him. So I'll work with him to get that. But for the budget for now, we're going to be using some of our ending cash balance from 2019 to cover that until such time we can reprioritize those projects and see what the long-term plan will be. So all of those adjustments have been made in the ordinance that you have before you. So that is the one we're referring to on the first read, and I don't anticipate any further changes going into the 26th when we'll talk about this for adoption.
Okay, are there any questions? Yes, Paula.
Doug or Eric, either one of you can answer it, but I have seen that there are, King County and the City of Seattle have filed a lawsuit against this initiative based on the idea that it's unconstitutional and that it addresses addressed at least 3 items and not just one, which is by law what they're supposed to do. And I wondered if we had even looked at the idea of entering into that as a part of a package lawsuit type thing.
I have not.
Okay, that's a quick answer.
No, I guess I would say I'm not sure that the city would need to, because if Seattle and King County were able to invalidate Initiative 976 on constitutional grounds, that would also affect the city of Sedro-Woolley. On the flip side, we've seen this before. Mr. Iman seems to be a chronic multiple topic guy for initiatives, and the past practice seems to be court invalidation followed by legislative fixing of that to affect the will of the people. So I think it's safe to say it's in limbo, but not budgetarily. It's pretty clear that we needed to strip that $210,000 out. That's slurry seals on Earth Way. That's chip seals. That's asphalt. I mean, that is the vast majority of our road program, annual road program, that needs to be deleted out of the 2020 budget.
A question?
Yes.
Either Dr. Merriman or Aaron. So with our transportation benefit district going away, which was put into place here in Sedro-Woolley in 2014, councilmatically, and now we're looking at a $233,000 hole every year. I'm concerned about, one, the lawsuit here about suing the voters that it was the majority in Skagit County. I don't have the breakout by precinct, but in Sedro-Woolley. But what is the availability of the funds? I would think it'd be the gas tax funds, just a heap of money in Olympia that we all have to play Hunger Games for to compete for, and the real possibility of a motor vehicle excise tax where your tax per mile that you travel a year, which to me is a greater burden for us in Sedro-Woolley. How soon would we be able to get to that kind of tax money to help us out in 2020, or is this something that we're going to have to just bite the bullet for in 2020 and wait till it all comes about in 2021? What are we looking at?
I don't think we know the answer to that question.
And I've done some looking at it. If you go to Association Washington City's website, they have some strategies they're developing on there.
I've read it.
Yeah, it's going to take some lobbying effort and a consolidation of cities deciding which approach would be the best.
That's where I'm getting to, is maybe we have to take a look at how many hours we have with our lobbying firm and have a really cohesive effort from folks supporting to get that money back, because it's exactly as Aaron said, that's how we fund the roads that over the past 4 years that pleases many of my neighbors that they're getting done, and now that work has to cease.
On the flip side, they're going to slow down. Those potholes are going to make the cars go by your neighbors.
I wish that was funny.
Well, I think it's kind of funny. The answer to your other question, though, is it did pass overwhelmingly in all of our precincts.
Okay, thank you. I did not know that data. Thanks for the education.
No, they just uploaded that tonight, so it's fresh information.
All right, so this is a first read. We'll be looking at it again at our next council meeting. I didn't know if Councilman Couch, if you had a chance to take a look at the estimates.
The summary on page 82. Yeah, 82. I did look at that, and I guess it doesn't explain it. I guess I don't get a clear picture of everything that we're getting.
So that didn't answer. It doesn't answer your question, then, I guess, is my question.
And okay. I guess I don't support the 4 very large flat panel displays for the EOC, because one, where are they going to be placed, and does that improve what council's going to be seeing? Because frankly, when you sit up here and we have a presentation, your best shot is trying to make out the TV in the back wall, or for, I've sat down where Councilwoman Kelly is before, you can't see the side, so I think figuring out some type of display that's going to be in front of us is imperative. I don't want to spend the money if we're getting a partial fix. I would rather, like I said during work session, if we're going to spend the money, I want it to fix the issues in chambers, and I want it to provide better quality to the citizens who can't make it to the meeting that rely on the audio and video recording. So that's where I'm coming.
So would it be helpful then if we either had Bill or Glenn come in, and that way then you could ask your questions? I think you're going to find that it'll be easier to speak with him one-on-one or talk with him as a group here. So
I definitely think so. That's partially what I had expected, but not just
Well, we wanted to do that, but it was very last minute, and they were not able to do that. So they put this together in hopes that this might answer your questions, but...
I want to be really clear on one thing. I'm not against the upgrades. I just want to make sure we're spending the money properly. And like I said before, if we can wait another year and do the project correctly, then I would support that. My goals are improving what council can see when we have presentations, and those who can't, citizens that can't make it, better audio and video for the council meetings.
Which is what we all want.
So my understanding is, following up from what you were talking about, we have a timing issue here with the budget, but the bulleted items are what would require about $40,000 to achieve. So we would need $10,000 more in the budget next year. And if you look, the third bullet would get you monitors at council stations. And in terms of the large screens, what we talked about before was having screens like even up in here that would be useful for council to see, and then pointing that way. So kind of how would it be? It'd be like this. So council and staff on both sides.
It'd be
kind of a V. So I believe that for $40,000 you get where you want to go. And I'm not sure if there's any, we could certainly find a way to fund that if that's a 2020 objective versus waiting, another year or for another process. We can, if you want to go with that route, we can update the budget for next time. We can also plan to have a more detailed presentation to council before we execute the project, so you all will know exactly what you're getting for it. My perspective is we have a problem that we need to solve. It's been on our list for 2 years now.
I think I was left with the impression after work session that the staff are going to be here to answer the questions, and they're obviously not. So, and I won't vote on the budget to spend this money unless we get some clear answers, because in my mind, it's a significant amount of money.
So would you like it stripped out of the budget if we can't present Bill Chambers here?
I think we can have Bill or Glenn here.
Okay.
Madam Mayor? Yes. I would like to also show support on Councilman Couch that we do need further detail, and I also was under the impression, whether or not I misinterpreted that we'd have technology here as well. But what I'm specifically looking for is, since I've called in before with the speakerphone, is some more robust connection there, maybe something what they call a DI box where the microphones patch right in, and that shouldn't be too much of an expense from my previous experience doing these things.
And that's also listed on this budget, if you saw that.
I'm really glad that that's happening, so thank you for that.
So, our apologies. We had intended to have them here too, but they just could not because of the constraints. They just couldn't do it within a week's time, so this is what they could do. But we'll see if we can get them here.
Right, so we'll be looking at the Thanksgiving week meeting.
Yeah, the 26th. Meeting of the 26th.
I have a question. I was wondering, the installation, do we have someone in-house to do that, or is that extra? Okay.
Well, so that's the idea. For the $100,000, a company would come in and do the work. For $40,000, it's Bill and Glenn doing much of the work, really Glenn doing much of the direct installation work. That's one of his capabilities.
Right on. Thank you.
All right, anything else?
Oh, yes. Madam Mayor, I just wanted to say thank you for including the community with the budget and taking council member proposals. Felt it was really inclusive to have council be able to work in the work-study program to hear different proposals, and the 4 that I put forward have been addressed, and I want to show my appreciation for being heard and having the council help polish those ideas. So thank you.
But I do want to remind the council that in the future, if you are going to invite guests in, it would be nice if we're notified so we can prepare for that, because that's not what we do in the work session. We do not take public comments. We do that during our 2nd and 4th meeting. So, yes, thank you. Okay, let's move on to unfinished business then. The revenues for 2020 budget. Looks like you...
Oh, yeah. Revenues.
On page 84?
So, talked about this last time as well. So there are 4 ordinances, and the first ordinance would address the utility tax. It's an increase of 1% to pay for the city general fund share of the public works building. And then the utility rates, you can see beginning on page 85, the components of each of the rates are broken out. There's a slight change from the last reading to now regarding the public works building, which you can see discussed in the memo. And then really what you're seeing is, the comparison that was requested is on page 86. And in the actual ordinances, I think the only other item I would note is in the solid waste ordinance. In addition to the rate increases discussed in the memo, there are some particular item changes. There's a reductions in rounding of costs for items that people bring to the solid waste yard. We increased them by a percentage, I think, this year. So if you wanted to get rid of a, green, probably not green waste, but a refrigerator, instead of paying $15, you paid $18.42, and making change was highly problematic. So Leo requested that be rounded back down to an easy amount for making change. And then he also requested that we add, I think it's mattresses, recliners, and sofas and chairs as a pickup service with a fixed cost. His comment was driving the routes, feels like he's seeing an uptick in these items in yards, and the hope was that by adding a cost, a person could simply wheel the recliner out to the curb, gets picked up, added to the bill for an established rate, and that would maybe increase the pickup on those. So otherwise, I don't have anything new to add. I'm happy to answer any questions. All 4 of these ordinances are necessary to implement the budget and have been discussed now a couple times by council.
And the motions are found on page 86 of your budget. Are there any discussions or questions or concerns?
Aaron, I have one question on the Public Works building. Very early on, when we started discussing that, there was talk of looking at existing properties within the city because of the high building costs and the fact that, have we explored options? I know at one point the Snelson property had come into discussion, and we thought that might be a suitable site due to the area and the large buildings there.
Yeah, so we are still exploring options that would include existing buildings as well as the new construction. Our preliminary cost estimates for new construction are problematic. So, Mark's been, I guess I'd call it value engineering that project to try to get it down to our target, which is $4 million. At this point, we're not quite there yet. So this second phase will establish the revenue stream necessary to service $4 million worth of debt. And I would hope sometime in early 2020 we'll be able to make a decision about whether we do an existing building or new construction on city's property with a building that's within that budget.
Thank you.
Yes, Paula.
We had approved a rate increase last year for the recycling and so forth. And we talked about how the problem was, who would take what and how much, what would they take and all that. Do we have an idea of whether or not Skagit, isn't that who takes our recycling?
Waste management.
Okay, waste management. Whether or not we're good with them, are they going to raise our fees again, or do we know?
So from memory, we signed a 3-year contract.
Right.
And that contract does have the ability for them to escalate. To my knowledge, we've not received any notice that they intend to escalate. And I actually have no information as to whether the quality of our recycling stream is something they're happy with. I don't believe they've done one of their audits, which I think you remember under the contract, they have the ability to put out the tarp and dump a load and do a hand sort. To my knowledge, they haven't done that to, assess the quality of our recycling stream.
Because they can fine us. They can fine us if we've got items in there.
So I don't have any more information on that, but at this point, I've not heard any information about increases other than from Skagit County for tipping fees on solid waste. And they've established, I think, a 4-year program of increases each year.
So they're going to continue to increase them every year for 4 years.
Yeah. Yeah, and those costs we did not capture in the 2020 rates, so that's something we'll need to be talking about 2021, 2022, 2023.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, so if there are no other questions, I'm looking for a motion to adopt our ordinance 1939-19, an ordinance increasing the city's utility tax rate on sewer, stormwater, and solid waste by 1%.
I move to make a motion to adopt ordinance 1939-19, an ordinance increasing the city's utility tax rate on sewer, stormwater, and solid waste by 1%.
Second.
Okay, so I have a motion by Councilwoman Cornegay, seconded by Councilman Owen. Any more questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay. So we have one nay by Mr. Cornegay, or by Mr. DeYoung. Sorry. Very sorry about that. All right. So, looking for a motion to adopt ordinance 1940-19, an ordinance increasing the rates for the sewer utility.
I make a motion to adopt ordinance 1940-19, an ordinance increasing rates for the sewer utility.
Second.
Okay. Any more discussion?
Clarification. Aaron, this is tied to the sewer part of the Public Works building?
The sewer's got, I think it's got all 3 components. Let me get back to that page. So it's got the 2.3% COLA, which is a $1.46 a month increase. The Public Works building is 17 cents a month increase. And then there's no R&R. So it's just those 2 components are reflected in the 2020 proposed rate.
Thank you.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, one opposed by Mr. DeYoung. We're looking for a motion to adopt ordinance 1941-19, an ordinance increasing rates for the stormwater utility.
Madam Mayor, I make a motion to adopt ordinance number 1941-19.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. Any questions? Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay. Again, Mr. DeYoung. And looking for the last motion to adopt ordinance 1942-19, an ordinance increasing the rates of the solid waste utility.
I make a motion to adopt ordinance 1942-19, an ordinance increasing rates for the solid waste utility.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. So I have a motion by Councilwoman Cornegay, seconded by Councilwoman Dunn. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, and again, Mr. DeYoung. Okay, so moving on to new business, to page 100, the comprehensive purchasing policies. Mr. Merriman?
We'll walk you through this one.
Mr. Berg, okay.
So So this has been a project that's been in the making for quite some time, and I think the last time we did an update was probably sometime around 10 years ago or so. The city, as it's grown both in population and FTE and in complexity, does a lot of business with a lot of folks in a lot of areas. So everything from acquiring supplies unrelated to public works, to work that is a public works, to work that is not a public works but sort of looks like it could be a public works, to professional services that require specific requirements. Julie Rosario, who started here at the city as a payroll clerk, and I guess it was about 2006, moved into the Public Works Assistant role. Under Mark's time here, has moved into a role that includes kind of contract administration, federal highways compliance, and she does a lot of work with our purchasing compliance. Gets questions all the time from staff and from prospective vendors about how will this work. So she and I work closely together on a lot of those questions, and ultimately what we've done here is we found Bainbridge Island's, I think, really excellent work, which is developing a compendium of policies that captures what's required in Washington State, establishes delegated authority for certain areas, but provides a one-stop shop for how to do business with the city. Julie took that, kind of made it ours, and what you see here tonight is an ordinance that would adopt that policy, and then separately an ordinance that would adjust Sedro-Woolley Chapter 2.104 of our municipal code to conform to that ordinance. So modifications to Chapter 3.76, which is our existing purchasing policy, and modifications to 2.104, which is our delegated signature authority, are both included. Really, the substantive changes that you would see is right now we've got a council delegated authority to act up to $10,000. This would move that number up. It would create a new tier of delegated authority, which is the department head level, which would be up to $10,000, and from 10 to 50 could be exercised by the mayor or I. It also allows some delegated authority for surplusing certain items, so you don't have to see everything come across the council days. The $500 junkie police car, we would just be able to take care of that administratively and not turn that into a council action. Anything we do has to be, under this policy, has to be consistent with the budget, so there is council oversight in that way, and then any of the big ticket items, of course, come back to the council, and anything to do with the real estate also is retained by the council under this proposal, which is our current program as well. So I'd be happy to answer any questions. It's a first reading. What I'm hoping to get from you is some direction to see if you like where we're headed, if you'd like to see modifications or other examples. If we could probably dream, Julie and I would love to have this in effect in January, but that's your pleasure.
All right. Concerns, questions?
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
So, Aaron, Section 2.104.060, page 103 on my computerized packet, you're asking to have signing authority from $10,000 to $50,000. What is the current level, let's say, for Public Works Director?
Zero. So
the jump from 10 to 50, let's say, why isn't that, what's the 50,000? Is there how was that number picked, please?
That was actually Bainbridge Island's number, and it's a number I've seen in other communities. So it's, there's no mathematical formula to say, hey, it's been a decade, so we went from 10,000 to 50. It's just a number.
Just a number. I think I'm looking, Madam Mayor, I think I'm looking at that and thinking somewhere around 25,000 might be a number that sits well or better with me.
Based upon?
That's just a number.
Just a number? Okay.
I have a comment.
Yeah.
Along the same lines, what problems or what prompted this? What problems have we ran into that would justify raising that signing authority to $50,000?
I don't know that I'd articulate that it's a problem. It's really a matter of, I think, time and efficiency. It's a question of, does the council want to see everything that's above 10,000? You used to see everything that was above, a buck, theoretically, before we added the $10,000 authority, which was a new thing about a decade ago. So that's really council policy is how I'd answer that. From a staff perspective, it's obviously easier to administer not having to build a council packet to get approval of what is often and arguably a routine contract that's in the budget that you're going to approve 100 out of 100 times you see it. But that's your prerogative. And so I don't know how else to answer that other than to defer to your policy desires about your level of oversight.
I guess what I was getting at is, has it created any issues in a bid process where okay. And I'm on page 103, but we're currently, our department head signature amount is 0.
Correct.
That would go to
10,000.
And then the city supervisor and the mayor, it's proposed to go to 50.
Correct. From 10,000.
Right.
I kind of go along with Carl. I think $50,000 is a lot of money. And I hate to see the council stripped of the decision when it comes to that amount of money. I'll go along with Carl. I think maybe $25,000 would be fine, but $50,000, that scares me. I want to know, when it comes to the council, what we're buying, and take a look at it. I mean, if you needed something, you could just write a check and get it with no approval from the council. So I think the council should stay involved in big money matters. Take a good look at it before they spend that money.
And so I hear you. I don't think it's quite accurate to say without any involvement of the council, in that, one, the council would have to have appropriated the funds in order for that authority to be exercised, and that's regardless of what the dollar amount is, whether it's the current 10 or the 25 or the 50. And two, the check actually doesn't go out until the council approves it at a council meeting. And three, you get today, and I would expect you would continue to get a report of any contracts that we sign under that delegated authority. So it is definitely not in any way intended to strip a check and balance from the system. So just an answer to that point of council's lack of involvement.
What are you gaining by going that route?
Because there's a lot of time from our perspective and not having to prepare a council memo to let a contract that's, let's say, $12,000 for, I'll just make it up, toilet paper for the year, right? I mean, it's one of those things that's just not, in my experience, it's not something that gets pulled off the calendar, right? It gets approved. It always gets approved. It's a routine item, so it's not very interesting. But again, if 25,000 is your comfort level, then we'll bring it back with 25,000. I'm not arguing a number here. I'm just trying to answer your question.
Yeah. I guess that would be my thought. I'd like to see the 10,000 for the department heads and the 25,000 for the city supervisor and the mayor. And then on the, I'm trying to find the language on the surplusing. Is the surplusing in a separate?
Let me see if I can spot that. It's in the middle of the policy. You get to there.
I guess, is there, I'm fine with the, I guess just have no opposition to the surplusing. Because I think we do a good job of, as we saw tonight, and the police car's basically been stripped of all usable parts, and now we're getting rid of it.
So it should be on page, get in there, 30, it'd be 138 of the packet. This section 14, sale or disposal of city personal property.
I have, to the council, I have no issue with that. I would just support the...
It looks, I agree. It looks fine. I mean, if it's going to save time too, and paper probably.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Just my fiduciary bell is going off in my head, excuse me.
Okay.
So what kind of, I guess I would ask Aaron or Dr. Merriman, what kind of fraud usually happens with surplusing and the protection? Not that I'm saying that it's happening here, but just, thank you.
Well, my answer would be that the normal scheme would be to surplus something that has maybe higher value than it is sold for, and it's sold to a city employee or a city employee's relative. So that's expressly prohibited under our ethics code and would be, grounds for termination. But it would be, it's kind of that same scheme as the fake vendor, fake employee scenario, where you set up the bogus process. I guess the other one would be you sell to a non-relative, which would be allowed, but you sell it to a friend and you get a kickback. Again, crime, and definitely against the ethics code. It's just really stealing from the city. And I don't know if Doug's got some more elaborate schemes. we actually do talk about these things.
Yeah. And it's not that I have schemes. I've heard of other people having schemes. But, some of the things that you do run into, I have been investigating in previous places where there were frauds from purchasing areas and from surplusing. And in particular, you can have individuals, you can have something set aside in your inventory like street light poles from the Fairhaven district back years and years ago that no one remembers anymore because there wasn't a process on what to do with those when you don't need them anymore. And people have taken those home and sold those.
We have a process here, though.
So there is a process in to safeguard city assets. That's one of the key features.
Thank you very much. Just wanted to close the loop.
Okay, so if there's no more questions, that's a first read, and we can come back to that with the 25,000.
Please.
And the next one is ordinance amending Chapter 2.1, which we will come back when we pass the ordinance adopting the comprehensive purchasing plan. So, okay, with that, there's nothing else on the agenda, so if there is no objection, we are adjourned.
Go out and look at that anymore. What you got?
You'll notice that first turn on.